We actually have more people than audience. We have an audience.
Good.
Good. How are you doing? Good. No, I think it's gonna be good. One moment, please. Yeah.
Melissa, are you in yet?
Documents in the reminder. Oh. Okay. And I have to change email addresses.
Melissa, I've made you a co-host and the live stream is done. Share, so we are. Okay. So I know for sure that part of the audio in the room is not functioning properly. And so what I was asked is if anybody on the dais who's speaking or anyone who's a guest to please speak right into the microphone. And Lynn will probably let us know from home if they can't hear. It's going to be fixed soon. Lisa, did I say that right? Tuesday. So, but just know that if someone can't hear. Minus. I think it was me. I just turned it off. Rachel. Okay.
I don't bite. It's not hard. Nice to have you in the room. I know. See you in person. Yeah. Good. Okay. There's like this. Great. Perfect. All right. I was so excited. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll go ahead and start the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee meeting for the month of April. Wow, it's already April. It's good to see everyone in person, and we have people in the audience, which is very exciting. So we've done roll call, so that's all set up. The next item on the agenda is public comment, and just want to reiterate what Dina said. If you come up and speak, you can come up either to the table or to the podium. Just make sure you speak into the microphone, and if people can't hear that are with us online, you'll get to maybe repeat what you were saying. So if also public comment, we usually don't have a problem with it staying within 3 minutes, but that's kind of the time frame. So if anyone here in person would like to provide or speak with public comment, go ahead and raise your hand and introduce yourself when you come up to the podium or the table. Yep, it's your choice. You're very welcome. Thank you for being here. And could you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm very literal. I can be.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Skylar Brown Evans. I've lived in Bend since I was about 7. So that's about 29 years now that I've been here. I've been married here. I've been divorced here. I've been married again here. I'm a local comic book artist and a living history interpreter at the High Desert Museum. The home that I was in for the better part of a decade now, over on the south end of Bend near Walmart, is in squalor. I no longer live there because I'm now with my mother-in-law, Betsy. I'm there with her son. But as you can see on the first image, I was told that it was my fault for staying in a house that was a fire hazard. Parts of the roof are caving in with black mushrooms growing out of it. Every time it rained, there was water that leaked, if not in the front, then sometimes in the home. I attempted myself to repair it because my landlord told me that it was my responsibility as a tenant to upkeep the property. The only time she sent someone over was when the power went out in over half of the house when it was 5 degrees outside on December 22nd. I was made to make repairs myself, though I'm not licensed or contracted or anything like that. I'm a jack of many trades, but an electrician I am not. It made me physically ill to touch electricity. I was scared I was going to die, but what was I to do when my 10-year-old daughter at the moment was there shivering in the darkness? She did not respond, Anytime that I have received correspondence from her, it's only via email. I have not seen her since the last walkthrough she did, December in 2017. And the last time I heard her voice was just before the pandemic when I was the manager at Wabi Sabi. And even then, she was threatening to evict me for failure to pay when finances were held up because there was a nationally declared pandemic. I've done my best to stay strong. I have tried to persevere. I have installed linoleum in the house. I survived domestic abuse in that house. I was everything under the sun other than wife from a person who said they loved me. And even damages left behind, she tried to make me responsible for that my husband performed while he was attacking me. So I come today before you just to let you know that this is happening. I'm not a well-off person, but I make a little bit too much to even receive assistance from legal aid or anything like that. And in speaking with lawyers, they agree that my former landlord was out of compliance for a number of things. But where is my support? I contacted the city. I contacted code enforcement. I contacted the fire marshal. And everyone was so busy pointing fingers at who I needed to speak to that I never found a resolution. And here I am at age 35, living at my mother-in-law's home with my 11-year-old daughter and my husband. I am working in conjunction with the Fathers Group, a local Black-led nonprofit organization, to attempt to build my credit, to recover from what occurred to me during domestic violence. I'm trying to take hold of my own destiny. Though I am fated for something, that does not mean that's what my destiny is, and I will make my own destiny in this world. However, if I am suffering to this extent, there are others like me as well. Other white, mixed race, other people who make just a little too much to get the help they need, and not enough resources to say who can help. I was blessed to meet Miss Rachel and Miss Melissa at the Fathers Group just this past week, and my story seemed to have struck a chord with them, which is beautiful because I feel like I've been screaming into the void for years and years for no one to hear, and finally someone's hearing the echoes. So if my story can affect you in some way, thank you for listening. I just feel like we need a better resource. We need someone to be able to say, this is who is responsible for landlords and what they are and aren't doing, and who is supposed to help with code enforcement for already built homes rather than this is only code enforcement for new homes. Owners must be held responsible for their homes because I was left to just pick it all up and do it myself. But I thank you for your time. I appreciate you all for listening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair,
Thank you, Skylar. Yes,
can I ask our staff a question regarding this item, or are we not allowed to speak when it's on public comment?
that I don't know.
I think we should see if there's any other
Right,
public
and
comment, and
then-
then if you have a question regarding.
Any other public comment? If so, just come on up. Tyler. Introduce yourself, though. Just don't rely on mine.
Will do. Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Tyler Neese. I'm the Government Affairs Director with the Central Oregon Association of Realtors. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to comment today. I wanted to speak to something that's on your agenda a little later today, which is a proposed fee increase. It's not news to anyone on this committee, obviously, that our city, our state faces a number of housing challenges. We have a housing deficit of about 110,000 units statewide, which is about a 7-year backlog of housing. Here in the city of Bend, we have about a 3 to 5, probably more than that, 1,000 unit backlog deficit of housing. And so obviously this housing supply gap coupled with steady demand just sees our housing costs, housing prices continue to rise. Again, something I know that you know well. So council has been very supportive, I know, of taking strong actions to address our housing challenges. I think that was demonstrated through their goal setting process. And so I think that's why it was surprising for us to see this proposed increase of about 60% to the fees. And I think that without a little more information and context would seem to be counter to, the city's goals around housing. And so that's my request for you on behalf of the organization would be just to ask those questions, try to gather a little more information as to, what the justification is for the fee increase, what this looks like, excuse me, kind of the true costs, some accountability, some transparency. I mean, we do recognize obviously the importance of fees to fund infrastructure projects, things like that, operating costs and things within the city, but this is a significant increase in fees. And I think if, we're not clear on what it's going to, could have a really significant impact on housing availability, affordability, attainability within the city. So with that, I thank you for your consideration of those concerns. And again, we just ask you to kind of ask those questions, see if you have a good sense of where this is going and kind of what the process is. But most importantly, thank you for your service to Ben, for all the work that you do for the community for affordable housing. We really appreciate it. So, thank you for your time.
Could I just ask, when you say fees, are you talking about building permit fees or SDC fees or both?
Yeah, so it's my understanding there's a proposal around permitting fees. That's
Permitting fees, okay.
something you're going to be looking at today. But if you want to cut SDCs too, that would be great.
Right. That's a separate,
Fully supportive of that.
SDCs are over here. We don't get to touch those.
I know that's something.
We get to speak about them a lot, but yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Tyler. Anyone else in the room here for public comment? Is there anyone online with their hands raised or anything? Okay, so with that, I'm gonna go to Kathy with your question.
It's for Rachel.
Okay, but it's your question.
Yes.
Okay.
So Rachel, regarding the comments of our first speaker, apparently she met you and talked to you. And can you let us know if there is specific resources at the city currently for this situation, or are you aware of, if there needs to be? I mean, obviously this is a terrible story. So just wanted to ask your opinion on the status of this in the situation in the city.
I could reach out to our Community Economic Development Department and see if we can have them speak to code enforcement and what they are capable of doing and not capable of doing, and what I can explore what avenues the city has and does not have to respond to issues that have been raised by these comments.
It might be helpful to reach out to some of the organizations like the Fathers Group or whatever, when you do find out this information, to try to spread it around as much as possible. Or even have something posted on our housing section of our website for this kind of situation.
Isn't that essentially kind of what some of the nonprofit groups surrounding fair housing are trying to tackle? Is landlord tenant law? I know that it's been spoken in years past on some of the service funding requests that they're trying to be available, especially for ESL communities, to be able to inform them of what their rights are as tenants versus what they don't have to do if the landlord is telling them. I mean, that seems like this would fall within it regardless of if they're low income or middle income. I just find it kind of astounding that resources weren't available for you.
Well,
Regardless of your financial position, the law is the law. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to find out if where the service
if
money is going.
Allison would want to maybe speak to this.
Well, I mean, what comes to mind is legal aid being a service for a number of people in a similar position, but like you said, if your financial resources are just a little bit above what they're allowed to, what their parameters require, then you fall into this sort of middle ground where you couldn't hire a private attorney necessarily. But some cases of landlord tenant issues, even after the fact, can be handled in small claims court without attorneys. That's one thing that comes to mind perhaps. And or an attorney that specializes in landlord tenant stuff, landlord tenant law
Right.
and might be willing to take it on a contingency or something along those lines, because landlord tenant actions do involve attorney fees for the prevailing party typically. And if this is something where I'm not sure, I can't give legal advice about this now, but being a lawyer, I think there's some resources out there, and it's a matter of whether or not you could afford to retain somebody or if they might do contingency. And then I know for some people, that's something legal aid definitely looks at. Off the top, and there's also a program in Deschutes County that's come up again called Lawyer in the Library. I don't know if you've ever utilized that, but you've heard of it. Yeah, if you can look at the Deschutes Public Library website, I believe there's a sign-in or registration sheet, and you might be able to talk to somebody individually about some other options for you. That's a neat community resource that I don't think a lot of people know about, that isn't available in a lot of communities, and something to try.
And legal aid is only available to those who make below federal poverty guidelines, which is
Okay.
much lower than the AMI levels that we typically talk about.
Right.
There is,
Go ahead. Go
in
ahead.
general, there is
We have softwares.
okay, in general, there is a benefit gap between being in poverty and making that jump to being able to really be self-sustaining. It is a very hard gap to get over. It is a huge bridge, and there isn't a lot of help there, broader than just housing. When you make over a certain amount, you lose your
Mhm.
SNAP benefits, your Medicare, Medicaid benefits, you lose housing benefits. All of that generally eclipse the cost of whatever raise or increase you got. So it's a huge. In
And-
my,
Yeah. And my concern is just the condition of the home. I've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of homes in Deschutes County and the Tri-County area. And isn't there, I mean, if you have a signed lease, a landlord has a responsibility to provide safe, clean, livable housing. So I guess that's where my miss is even getting legal aid, just having a home that is in that condition is appalling to me. And what are the resources, how to get the property owner to actually own and take care of the property in a timely fashion, so you have a place to live.
If you stick
So-
around for the meeting, can I talk to you afterwards?
Yeah,
Thanks.
Yeah, I'd be happy to too. I might be able
Yeah.
to give you some names.
thank you. Thank you for speaking. That was not easy. No. And great resources. Thank you for that input. I'm gonna put my glasses back on. Oh, I think that is the end of public comment then. Are there no additional? Okay, thank you for the additional input. Did everyone have a chance to review the March minutes?
Indeed.
Okay, I was not here in March, and I want to thank Matt for covering for that meeting. Thank you for covering as chair. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from the March 8th meeting.
a second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any additional questions or discussion? I just wanted to comment that I read the minutes, even though I wasn't here. It was pretty interesting to have SDCs on I want to say cottages, but
Temporary
the
shelters.
temporary shelters. I'm reading the minutes and I'm like, am I
Shocker
really
for us,
reading this
too.
in the minutes? Yeah. So anyway, thanks for working through that. Let's have a vote. I don't think any committee members are online. They're all in person, right? Joanna's just not here. All in favor of the minutes, please raise your hand. And I can still approve even because I trust the minute taker. So
you.
all in approval. Yes, I trust you. Thank you. Amy, you are up next with the shelter update. Thank you. Yes, you have an introduction.
And do you want to make the introduction?
Oh, yeah, Lynn McConnell is online. Okay,
I guess it's gonna be.
okay, go for it.
This is Brooke O'Keefe, and she has joined as an affordable housing coordinator, and she's going to help with shelter. And so I'm just very grateful to have her here. It's her first week, and she came back after day 1 and 2. So we are very excited. And she comes from Neighbor Impact, and I'll just let her introduce herself.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's wonderful to be here. I'm really excited to be starting this position.
All right.
There you go. I like that, quick and to the point.
There we go.
We're just going to provide the shelter update today, and I did send out some materials last night, so we're going to run through it just real quickly, and we'll start with those navigation center numbers that we consistently see each meeting, and you can track that we continue to go up as far as nights of shelter. They went up to 138 people overnight. What that means after the first 100 is that folks are in the day room, on the floor, on mats, or on couches, or just kind of scattered throughout, tucked into any corner that they can find space. And we're grateful that Shepherd's House continues to provide this. Last night when we all woke up this morning, we went to bed, and then we saw the snow. It just, we know that it continues to be pulled out, and there continues.
So the bars, is that number of nights during the month?
During the month.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
And so their target, or what we really have available, is 31 days in March. 3,100. Okay, well outside of that. And then even with this influx of people and being so high in their numbers, Shepherd's House is continuing to transition folks to more permanent housing. And so you can see right there, they had quite the bump. Many of these placements are to Bethlehem Inn is more permanent housing. And then also they have a pretty large percentage of folks who they reunify with family. And so they'll provide a bus ticket or coordinate some kind of transportation or an opportunity for the family to come and pick their family member up and transition them to another spot. So, and they'll have that family support. We had talked last month about the finances and just a better understanding of how we are funding these shelters. And so we're starting again with the Navigation Center. Shepherd's House, 3-year contract, and we received 2.5 million to start the program, and that was directly from DAS, and then 1.5 million from Oregon Housing and Community Services. You can see that that correlates nicely with the 3.9. What it doesn't include is overhead. What it doesn't include is facilities making that space work and responding to calls. Doesn't include Brooke and myself or Lynn's time, Rachel, very important time, or Dina's time. And so it's we're right there, we're close, but we'll continue to look for other options for funding. And what's not included is the roof is caving in and a little bit leaky. And so we do have a renovation planned. There's 2.6 million set aside to do that renovation. Initially, it included a commercial kitchen as well as showers. We've talked before about the shower truck is there, but there are no showers for folks and for individuals and families that are trying to transition out, that have jobs. They don't have a place to wash their clothes. And so laundry is a part of that renovation. Multi-use bathrooms and just some more cleaner space for everybody. Hopefully 100, not 138, but we'll see how that goes. And a commercial kitchen. And we may have to remove the commercial kitchen at this point. Just because the bids have come in significantly higher than we anticipated, but we need a new roof and new HVAC desperately.
What is DAS?
Department of Administrative Services. Sorry about that, I just ruined this. And it's Oregon Housing and Community Services. Should be 100 beds, they're serving up to 138. They have those day services, and so they've got more than 26 organizations that are coming in and providing behavioral health support. Mosaic Medical Van was there yesterday when we drove by. We've got veterinary care. And so in the monthly report that I included last night, you can see a list of all those partners. I mean, it's Chick-fil-A doing job training. They're really working to create opportunities for individuals and families to move. Up to 138 and 3 meals per day. Right now they contract the family kitchen. They were hoping to have a commercial kitchen and develop that program themselves, but right now it looks like we'll be continuing to contract. Kitchen. And then Stepping Stone, Neighbor Impact, where we stole from. And there's 2 million in ARPA that was set aside by the city, local ARPA, and then 630,000 from OHCS. 28 units, they're all full. As of today, I went by and there was a mother and daughter toddler out there walking over to go see the ducks down by the river. It's 30-day program is what they're targeting of intensive services. And then they have 2 extensions of 30 days each. So it can go up to 90 days. There's daily meal service and case management is provided by REACH, which is Stacey Witty's program.
What
And they're-
happens after 90 days if you?
We haven't gotten to the 90-day point.
Okay.
So we'll see. We're hoping that people can be connected. Neighbor Impact has a really good track record of getting people into more permanent housing. This is a new parameter that was recommended not only by Neighbor Impact, but also by the case management team at REACH, that there has to be some kind of a program end date in order to help folks move along. So we haven't gotten to that 90-day mark yet since the opening, but I will report back as soon as we get some metrics. And then here's just a couple of our outliers. As you guys know, the Franklin Avenue shelter, the former Rainbow, is empty. There are 50 rooms there. We are requesting funds through the governor's emergency order. Calling it 60 beds. It'll be 1.1 million would be our request. And so that is out there. And Lynn has been really actively working with COIC to make sure we're responding appropriately to the governor's request for information. We have the temporary outdoor shelter, which we believe will be open in about 4 weeks out on Bear Creek and 27. STCs for transportation, that one. So we're very excited to have 20 pallet shelters available. They are going to be focused on women and women with children out of the gate. So a couple of those pallets have space for small families, which would be terrific. We're under a 3-year, 1.5 million for that 3-year. And then safe parking. Currently with safe parking, we have the 6 sites. 4 of those are communities of faith that are managed through REACH, again, who does Stepping Stone. And we look forward to.
I thought it was two-sided. I'm sorry.
And then, yeah, it's a safe parking. REACH manages 4, and then Central Oregon Villages manages the one spot with 2 pallets here downtown at the Methodist Church, and then Don's House is the other safe parking site. So we've had some inquiries about the overall bed count, and I can send this to everybody separately. There's a lot of debate sometimes within the community about how many beds are really out there. And this is available on the city site through the council webpage. The way we count is that each unit is 1 bed. So whether somebody's at safe parking and they have a motorhome, their family might be there, or they are at Stepping Stone and it might be a family and they've got a kitchenette. We always count it as 1 because that's we're starting to get to the point where we've gathered enough information and we know enough about how many people are in the rooms that perhaps we could look at beds a little bit differently. But at that minimum level, we have that 386. And then you can see that the Rainbow's up there for 60.
96 or 86?
I cannot see, and it's covered
I
on.
can't
the-
96.
It's 90.
Thank you, Brooke and Young guys.
396 doors
Yes,
or spaces.
yeah. That's what I have. Most of it's high barrier. Our only low barrier options are now. And Rainbow, Stepping Stone.
So the Franklin one, the Rainbow, the 60 rooms, those aren't even, how can you count them if they're not available
They are
yet?
not, they're in that column.
And
that's-
Oh,
the
okay.
fa- the
Fingers
Faded
crossed.
to the
Okay.
right. and
Yeah.
All right.
Clarified.
They're in
The 80 pending and possible.
pending. Okay.
I will say that that is the one place where we're counting a little bit differently. We're gonna count for 60 versus count, there's 50 units, 22 in the front, and then 28 in the back. But when we request some money, we'll say 60, and there will be some respite beds is our other proposal, in conjunction with St. Charles and Bean. at our overcapacity, that there would be some kind of respite available in our ADU units in the back. So that is our other appeal to the governor's office, is that this is a new service and would double the capacity that they have currently.
Amy, on that chart that, I'm sorry. Gosh. What's the real difference, or if you can put words to it, between the low and the high barrier? Where do they, low barrier, I presume, is just anything. What's
It
the,
doesn't mean no rules. So
Yeah,
low barrier would be not requiring sobriety. You can't use on property, but you wouldn't have to be sober to utilize the services. You can bring your pets,
oh,
which
okay.
is a huge piece. And if you've been to navigation, or if you've been to Rainbow or to Stepping Stone, pets are a huge part of a family unit. And you don't force people to engage in services, you offer services and you encourage people to engage in services, but it's not a part of the program or a condition of staying there.
Clearly the lowest amount of beds available of that stuff. So very
It
interesting.
is, it is challenging for them.
Did you have a question?
Quick question. Are you thinking that the Franklin shelter will be used to house people from the navigation center when you're doing work on the navigation center? Or are you hoping to just have additional people over there if you get the funding?
We're hoping to add additional capacity. Shepherd's House is the organization that has stepped forward and said they would operate it. And so there may be an opportunity to scale back the population there as we open Rainbow, to make the renovation go smoother. That being said, that our intent, as stated to COIC and to the governor's office, is to add capacity. And there was never a plan to totally shut down NAV. We will need to move people around just to do that. I work on the road and things like that.
Thanks.
I have a question, and it's just me wondering, you probably don't even have the answer to this, but the exits to housing opportunities, there was a massive jump in March, and you had commented that a lot of them were being placed with families, which was helping with that. Question just popped to my mind was why weren't they going to family members to begin with? Is there any sort of vetting that they're going to a safe place that maybe they weren't trying to escape from to begin with?
Most of the folks that are using services and navigation
Uh-huh.
are, there's shame associated with being houseless.
Understood.
And the circumstances that may have brought them there. And I would hate to speak for everybody.
Totally.
Just that families are sometimes really complicated.
Right. I mean, there's not a cut and dry answer for every single case, right? It's just like, I was like, I wonder why.
Kids grow up.
Yeah. I mean, I understand the shame portion of it, you know, it's kind of have to sometimes have somebody else help you with that transition. But I was also wondering on the other end of the spectrum, it's like, maybe they didn't want to go to those places to begin with.
I can say that nobody's just getting a bus ticket or like
Okay.
forced into a car or anything
Okay.
like that, that there's some significant work that's done through the case managers, both at the navigation center, and then there's behavioral health support. And then we do have a new agreement with the county that there's going to be county staff in there providing case management and support
Awesome.
too. So there's work to be done for that reunification.
Cool. That does answer my question. Thank you.
They're getting a lot of services they might not have had access to or wanted people.
Oh, we have a question from, yes.
No, the joint office determined that it would be better to not have office space at the Rainbow, but to be able to move freely throughout the community and hold meetings or use county space. So, yeah. And at the time when Cheyenne came on, there was actually a family in that unit. It was one of the bigger units, and she very kindly was like, the last thing I want to do is come in and displace somebody. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And Counselor Campbell, could you please repeat the question a little louder? The folks at home didn't hear your question.
Of course, I'm so sorry. My question was whether the joint city and county office is at the Rainbow Motel at this moment.
Thank you very much. And they got that.
Okay, good. Okay, I was gonna ask if that was clear.
Yep, we got it.
Any other questions for Amy? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This information is very helpful. Next, we have Carrie to provide a middle income housing report.
I'll be real literal like you two.
Yeah.
Right. And
Right into the microphone.
Chair, committee members, I'm just going to give you a quick high level update of some progress with the middle income program. And then see if there are any questions. I don't have an actual slide presentation for you today. So something that we've been working on is basically creating the process for moving forward with a request for information and qualifications for middle income housing funds that have been set aside. And so in the immediate future, we'll be presenting to council that process for approval. Once that process is approved, if that process is approved, then we'll move forward with a RFQ, RFI process for gathering information and interest from the community, specifically from our development community and even employers and the like who are interested in partnering in creating middle income housing. And then from there, it's a two-step process that we will then pursue an RFP, request for proposals. So I wanted just to give you a heads up that that's been in the works and being created and things drafted and will be presented to council shortly. The other update that I wanted to give was on our ADU pre-approved plans program. There's been a lot of discussion and buzz on it. People are pretty excited. I just wanted to let you know that it's a two-phase process. The first phase should be launching soon. It's in final administrative review, basically. So upper management and legal has their eyes on it, and we'll know if we can launch it shortly. Finally, we have a need to know from you and the community, but I brought this to the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee for Middle Income Housing yesterday, and I'm bringing it to you now. We need to know what you are seeing in the market. So what's happening in the market and what is the response? What is the market response to, interest rates shifting, everything from real estate to interest rates impact, and then of course, construction and production, and maybe even we're interested in knowing the shift in product that needs to be made available. So basically what's happening in the market and what the response has been as far as the need versus the market. And that's something that if you wanted to speak to now, we would love to take notes and for the record, but also just really wanting to get information from you and others that might not be in this room. That's what we're after this week, really reaching out to get more from you.
So we might have some feedback now. When do you need like a formal answer to those questions? Like by the next meeting, or?
We're seeing
Give you a
this week,
call?
this
Okay.
week, we're looking for information now immediately. So we discussed it at the TAC yesterday, Middle Income Technical Advisory Committee. And we wanted to discuss it here this evening. And then this week, staff has been reaching out. So it's something we're doing this week.
Okay.
So yeah.
Matt, I
Yeah.
saw your hand.
We spoke to this yesterday. So some of the things that I'm seeing, the real estate market from the home lending standpoint is definitely heating up. There are people still getting outbid for offering asking price on homes. But there's this middle market that's completely missing. I have been invited on several instances to go and sit with Core Community Land Trust's Poplar application process. They have meetings about every week now. Their application process opened last week. So I'm kind of speaking about the lending portion of what to expect if you want to go get through the pre-approval process. The last meeting had over 30 people at it. And that was just one meeting. For core.
Yeah.
And they only need to go to one. And the application's been open for 1 week. There's another meeting this Saturday where I'm anticipating as many, if not more, because it falls on a Saturday.
And how many units are available?
7
For Poplar.
for Poplar. So the last, and I'm just speaking on Core's behalf right now. It's just because from what I've been listening to, but they had about 60 applicants last time for their 8th Street property. 5 houses. There was over 30 people at this last meeting alone. This middle portion of home purchasing is missing. From the like $200,000 to the $350,000 price range, there's nothing available. People are coming out wanting to purchase homes. Interest rates have dropped slightly. There's just nothing available. That's what I'm saying.
Matt, a follow-up question on that. Of these applicants, are you seeing that they're qualified?
Yes.
What is your, okay. So of all the
The
applications you've
Vast
seen,
majority of them are qualified if these homes existed.
So I was reading before this meeting, like the average cost to build a single family home in Oregon is like 315,000. So it makes it hard. I mean, Melissa knows with Habitat and the history there, it makes it hard to have a home at the 250 to 300 range when it costs even more just to even construct one and have it be available. And I haven't seen homes in the Bend area priced under 300,000 for many years.
Not unless they're deed restricted, affordable, subsidized builds.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to
No,
do.
that's true. I know, exactly. So
Yeah.
that is missing, and I'm starting to sense energy in that direction. Just the chamber's involvement, getting businesses involved. It would be great for businesses to somehow shift their tax structure so they're paying less taxes so they can make housing more available, maybe shift that. I know that's a big state discussion. That's a big macro thing, but businesses are taxed a lot in the state of Oregon. And I'm hoping there's a shift that they can have their less taxes, or they can maybe more businesses can participate in helping provide housing for their employees. I'm just throwing it out there. I'd like to see that. I'm not in charge of the state, but that would be a nice shift that would help more people than not. That's my 2 cents. Kathy.
Yeah, I just want to talk from an architect's perspective. What I'm seeing in my work is projects that were supposed to be mixed use with commercial on the first floor. We're coming back and putting 100% residential in these buildings. I'm also focusing on some pretty small 1-bedroom apartments because there's, we've discussed, I think, with Habitat that the average family size is really 2, not 4, and that there's a lot of single people that need these places as well. But in terms of ownership, and I have to make a caveat that I work primarily still in California, and the liability for condos shut all condos down.
Yep.
And so it isn't as bad here in Oregon, but people need to understand there's a huge liability against all architects and engineers to try and do a condominium. And in California, there's no end date on our liability, whereas the builder is off at 10 years. And so we're liable for the rest of our lives and have to carry insurance for the rest of our lives. And so you can't just say, well, why don't we do more condos unless we have some significant changes in law? And also, there used to be 24 insurance companies in California. And once all the suits came out about condos, it dropped down to 4. So even finding insurance is an issue. And it's sad. And I have gotten a presentation. I've seen a presentation on co-ops. And my hope was that there might be a different structure around co-ops that could work. But it's going to be very tough for ownership for people in this position. And of course, the hike in interest rates just made it all that much worse. But I just wanted to, for some people who aren't involved in the design of these, needed to kind of know a little bit of that background.
Question. Can you remind me of the, like the income that would be considered like middle income bracket?
yeah, that's 80 to 120% AMI traditionally.
Allison.
I was just gonna, you said staff is reaching out to some folks to get some comments from there. And I imagine you've reached out to COBA one way or another.
Yeah, we've
Just
we've
checking,
talked to members.
Because they'll have that information.
Matt, I had a follow-up question also for the mortgage industry. Are there products that are out there in response to what's happening in the market, or what are the needs for the middle income, or just?
Yes, there are new products being developed. There's specialty products supplied by certain entities right now. I don't know if I'm able to say my employer, but Umpqua Bank is one of them, offering for middle income to the AE to actually 100% AMI and below. Essentially, it's a 97% first mortgage, and then the 3% down payment plus closing costs are subsidized in a second mortgage. So individuals who are at that 800% AMI level or below are able to purchase a home where they would not have been able to save for a down payment, maybe because they were paying rent. That's very high in Central Oregon. Obviously, there are other parameters that need to be met within that, but there's interest in this space and opportunity available, albeit brand new.
Just no homes.
And we're finding things. Yeah.
Yes.
Does that help?
It does. I don't know, Lynn's online. Lynn, do you want to expound at all on this question, or do you have any follow-up questions or want to bring up anything regarding the market?
Hi, everyone. Thanks. It's been really fun to kind of sit in the background and let this amazing team just roll today. So really, I'm appreciating that and this discussion. I think that one of the main questions I still have for you all is sort of overall sentiment and around risk and sort of moving forward with development in the environment we are in right now. And I think the city is really looking for feedback from the community locally, because Bend is somewhat of an anomaly. Sometimes when you look at what's happening across the country, that doesn't always apply to Bend in quite the same way. And so really trying to make sure that we're listening to folks who are working in this market about risk, about tolerance, about sort of eagerness to continue with big projects, little projects, et cetera. And is there anything that we in the city level should know about that equation right now and sort of the general sentiment from development really up and down the chain? I'd love to know if anyone has thoughts beyond that, either today or via email or call, sometime by the end of the week, if that's better.
From the 120% AMI level and below, the demand is extremely high for housing in the purchase market. I don't think by any shape of the imagination we've even touched the event horizon on what needs to be done. But it's as far as risk goes, the last time we saw a significant economic collapse, out from the ashes rose the Dodd-Frank Act. So lending is under much more scrutiny now, and the types of loan products and the processes are much more risk adverse. So risk is far less on that front than it was back in, pre-2008. And if, heaven forbid, something were to happen where a new homeowner would need to be found, the demand is there.
And Matt, are you seeing folks pull back from anything that they've been working? I know you're primarily in the residential space, so maybe a little less of a predictor than the commercial space, but curious if you're seeing any sort of pullback from folks, or if folks are still absolutely confident in the Bend market in terms of making investment here. Any thought on that?
Bend market is still strong from my point of view on the construction, because I do construction lending as well.
Oh, good. Okay, thanks.
And the Bend market, but the available buildable land is the limiting factor in how expensive it is. So people are actually looking outside of the Bend market, especially down in Lapine, South Deschutes County, North Klamath. Those markets, in my experience, are absolutely exploding right now with new construction. And it's affordable. And people who are cash rich are moving to our area and still pursuing financing.
Right. And
thank you.
The new construction market in real estate, it's about 40% of the sales. Wow. Which you wouldn't know unless I told you or somebody told you. But that's the new construction has been picking up since the beginning of the year. And I'm just repeating what I heard at our my office's sales meeting this morning. But the market, we still shortage of inventory, shortage of buildable land. I feel like I'm repeating myself. It's like Groundhog Day. But that's still those are still big issues for our area.
I have a buyer in Portland that just lost out on a home because it went $60,000 over asking price. Nothing's changed.
Oh, go ahead.
6-0 over asking.
Well, I was just going to add to what Cindy said from the Builders Breakfast and listening to the state economist a couple of weeks ago. New construction is really that doesn't mean there's a ton of it. It means
Right.
there's a lot less homeowners doing selling their home and buying another because interest rates are so much
Exactly.
higher. So there's just fewer existing homes. Right. There's
From my perspective, which is somewhere between Matt's and Kathy's. I'll say that there's a heightened interest in building for long-term lease, which is a market that has historically not existed in certain products in Deschutes County. That's something I'm seeing in a number of communities like Bend. It's certainly happening strongly in some communities in Utah, in Boise, in other metropolitan areas that we would consider neighbors to us economically, where the understanding from pretty large group in the development community is that the pricing for a purchased product is really not going to get down to touch that again. And so there's a safety in building for long-term lease, which is just not something I've seen hardly ever in my life. I'll say for Bend, because there's no more dirt coming available in the city, the development's continuing, and it's continuing to move up in terms of price per square foot as a target. The development that's happening is going more and more into an articulately high-end product instead of a product that happens to cost a lot of money. And those products tend to not equalize in price nearly as quickly because the amenities that are in there are ones that are going to retain their value better.
Right.
And they're not going to have quite as much of a new car smell that goes away, if you will, in 5 years. There's very, very little shuffle, which is what my colleague was saying, is that if folks are moving, they aren't moving to another house in this community. They are moving to not this community. And that's a tremendous loss for all of us. But yeah, the unit economics seem to be moving towards a lot of folks in development and commercial real estate, basically betting on the fact that for purchased product will not in the foreseeable future decade become available again to a lot of folks. And I think they're probably right on that.
And when you say long-term lease, just longer than 12 months or like 5 years?
Right. So products that are being built where the developer and owner do not ever intend to sell.
Oh, that's long.
Yeah.
Okay.
So build to lease developments, essentially.
There are quite a few of those being contemplated here and in other communities that my company works in that are similar to Bend.
Which are not really home ownership, then
Correct.
it's another form of a lease.
Right. And it starts to fill, price-wise, it starts to fill the gap of a monthly cost that a for purchase condo might fit. Because they are new, they are a nicer, if you will, more modern housing stock, but they're not a thing where equity ever builds.
Right.
And they're moving into that where a condo payment would have previously existed. Because that doesn't exist in the market, they're providing a product at that price point, but one that will always be a for rent product. And that's certainly new in my time in this career.
Yeah, that's a trend. I read a lot of the builders magazines, and that's a trend all across the country, and it's growing and growing and growing. So you're right. It's filling a need that's there. I know we're going to talk about SDCs later, but I just wanted to point out, because I think Lynn was saying, what does the city need to know? And we are looking at rethinking how SDCs are figured out. And there's an issue that it doesn't make a lot of sense for a builder to build smaller because the kitchens, the bathrooms cost so much, and
Right,
the
they're the
bigger
most
the house,
expensive
the
part.
more you spend, spread out. So the direction that we're going in is reducing the SDCs for the smaller homes and increasing them on those high-end custom homes. And we even had feedback from COBA saying, the high-end custom homes are just going to pass it on to the buyer anyway. Whereas it's such a huge percentage of the square foot cost in the smaller end. And so, I know we're going to talk about it more, but I just want to say the city is going in the right direction to try incentivizing the smaller product and also the middle market product that we've been talking about, the plexes and the townhomes and cottages. And so it is something that the city is reacting to the situation. And I've been very pleased. I've been representing our group on that, and I've been very pleased with the direction that it's going. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Toss that little nugget out and then.
Something
we'll
positive
see.
to
Yes.
say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all so much. I don't want to, if it's okay, this is super interesting, but I do want to make sure that we have time for everything else in the agenda because we have a couple really important discussions coming up still. If it's all right, I'd love to get emails or phone calls from anyone who has other thoughts through the rest of the week, me or Carrie, whoever looks friendlier on any given day. And we will try to compile it all and put it into something that makes sense. So really appreciate that. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
So there are a couple of things I'm going to mention. So we have a guest speaker, Colin Stevens, but he can't be here until 4. So he's got like 3 minutes. So I'm going to try to tuck 3 minutes with opening the public hearing for the CDBG consolidated plan. And we'll open the public hearing now. And then I'm going to toss it to Rachel. She's going to give us some more information and we'll go from there.
All right, first, let me share my screen. You're all like confused because you haven't seen the consolidated plan.
I saw it like 5 years ago. It's like this thick.
And what I would recommend before you get the new consolidated plan is maybe to look at our previous consolidated plan. The previous consolidated plan is a little thinner. We have done a lot in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And we are planning to do a lot more in the next 5 years. So this consolidated plan is going to be a little thicker, which is why we wanted to make sure you all had time to thoroughly review it and that the community has time to thoroughly review it. So again, I'm going to share my screen.
Shouldn't we just call it the plan since it's no longer consolidated?
This spread out.
How big is it? You're gonna tell so many pages in this? Is it over 100?
It is
Yes.
over.
It's over 100.
You should win an award for it.
We're gonna play red.
Just trying to, there we go. And then. Okay. So it'll be posted on the City of Bend's website. We will make sure you all are aware when that is posted and make sure that the community is aware when that is posted because I cannot email it to you or to anyone else in the public. However, if anyone is interested in a printed out copy, we are happy to print that out and get it to you. Public comment will be for 30 days from its posting. And then there's going to be a council presentation at work session. That's a 3 p.m. start on Wednesday, April 19th. Yeah. Oh, maybe it is 3:30. And then council will consider its approval in May and AHAC will close the public hearing and take final public comments for approval and AHAC discussion at their May meeting as well. Any questions or comments? Was anyone here to comment on?
And you were going to try to have it available by the end of this week? Is that
That's our
right?
aim, yes.
Okay, that's the goal. All right. Does anyone have any questions? Just
Aside from acquainting ourselves with this, what are we doing with it?
So this is the essentially planning document that helps us determine what our goals are and what we will prioritize with our CDBG funding that we receive over the next 5 years. And Melissa spoke to the information that we had collected at our last AHAC meeting regarding that we see a greater demand for services for our houseless and shelters for our houseless. So that has moved to our number one priority. However, our goals based on all the information collected are virtually the same.
Right.
After that houseless prioritization, it's, number 2, rental housing, affordable rental housing. Number 3, public services. 4, affordable home ownership opportunities, and 5, infrastructure to make all those things happen. So the goals are pretty much the same. It's just you get to see how much we've done in the previous comp plan, and you get to see how much we're going to do in the next 5 years. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
And it's easy to find the link. I am computer challenged, but it's easy for me to find it. So it's got to be easy on the affordable housing webpage. It's at the bottom. And it's actually really interesting, especially being on this committee for 6 years, seeing the progress from 6 years ago to now. And I mean, Barb has been our liaison as long as I can remember. And it's a really thick document, but it's really exciting to see the progress and where it's just going to keep exploding. So it's really exciting in a nerdy sort of wordy way. A lot of words. Yeah, there's lots of repetition. So Lynn, is there anything else to add? Okay. Okay, bye-bye now. So yes, look for that and share it with anyone. Just let people know it's available. They've got 30 days to look at it. All right, so next on the agenda, Colin, I saw you sneak in. Colin Stevens from the city. He is here to do a review for the Community and Economic Development Department permitting fees. And you have 30 minutes. I was told to give you a timeline. Okay.
Would have been nice to know that before I got in here. I can bang through this.
You just get a shuffle like we do sometimes. Yes.
I can accommodate. And I have Teresa Briggs, our business manager for CEDD. She knows our budget inside and out. And she's going to steer for me. And I'm also, I like to stand up when I get the presentation, so I might walk up to the point or up to the screen to point. So.
And be sure to speak in the microphone because we have people online.
Sure.
We still are having microphone issues, I guess.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Colin.
So 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, first slide. So what I'm going to do, this is kind of an agenda. It's a who, what, and why. Who we are as a department, what permit fees are, and why they are going to go up. Next, so as we are behind police and fire, we're utilities and CEDD are the 2 other biggest departments. We have 121 full-time employees. This is for the upcoming budget year, 30 million total in budget. And we process over 5,000 applications in aggregate every calendar year, and that's just keeps going up. And how we're funded is primarily through fees. We get a little bit of other revenue, so about 14% is other, but 86% is coming in just solely through fees for the department. A little bit of general fund for growth management, code enforcement. I won't, in the interest of time, I won't read through that. But next slide. What are the permit fees? They are a way to pay for people. We don't build streets like our capital folks do. We don't buy fire trucks or Vector trucks. We just pay people to provide services to the community and for permit review and inspections. And to do that, we have engineers, we have infrastructure inspectors, planners, plans examiners, building technicians, building inspectors, admin staff, and all of those people work in the department. Most of them have some form of certification or professional training in order to do this kind of work. Very skilled workers. And these funds, the fees, what they are dedicated to CEDD. So they stay in the department and in fact, they stay in the fund. And I'm going to talk about 3 funds primarily: the building division fund, the planning fund, and the engineering fund. And so each one of those, the fees that go into that fund, stay in that fund, other than the payments that they need to go out towards overhead. What they are not, fees are not systems development charges. They are paid often at the same time when somebody picks up a permit.
So there is a thought, and when people pick it up, but this is all going into the department at the front counter where I'm paying this fee. But all we do at the CEDD is pass the SDCs over to streets or utilities. And we even collect the park SDC and send it over to the park district. Keep a little tiny bit of that for admin, because we are allowed to do that just to administer the SDCs, but the bulk of that goes out to help pay for projects that increase infrastructure capacity. These are also not discretionary funds to be directed to other city services. Can't use a permit fee to go fill a pothole. Just can't do it. Stays in the fund, in the department and in the fund. They're not intended to produce a profit. We do in the instances where we collect more than we expend for that year, it goes into a reserve or a contingency so that when we have a rainy day, we eat into that. And you're going to see the whole story behind that in the next few slides. And they're also not backed by the general fund. So when we run out of fees, if we don't cover it and we run out of reserves, there's no insurance policy that's going to come and bail us out. And we just have to cut costs drastically. Next slide. Why do they need to be increased? Well, the cost of providing services has gone up. And as I said earlier, we're people, and the cost of personnel has gone up, not only for our department, but citywide. So staffs, just the cost of staff have gone up. Expanded programs and services as well. We have not taken fee increases every year. We've only taken 2 fee increases out of the last 5 years, and they were not significant. We had very healthy reserves from about 5 years ago that the council intentionally started to spend down and did not do fee increases. And now we've run out of time where that still makes sense. And also, this is not a want, it is a need. We are adding 1 new staff member. We're going from 120 to 121. For 2 years, we're adding 1 staff member. So the increase is necessary to keep our existing staffing levels and not lose ground on the turnaround time successes that we've experienced over the past few months. So, okay, I'm going to talk about the Building Safety Division's fund. And I'll take a little bit of time on this slide because you'll see this color bar in the next series of slides. I just want to make sure everybody understands what this is. This shows how the fees are distributed or really expended on a yearly basis. So for the bulk of it goes to building staff, the division staff. There's 44 of them. And so 62% of the fund covers that, or the expenses cover that. So this is really everything that's in their paycheck. The next line up, that little maroon bar, is materials and services. It's 4% of the fund or the expenditures for this coming year. The bulk of that goes to third-party review. About half of that is third-party review. It's a contract, so it has to live somewhere within the fund, and that it goes into materials and services. Other things in that part of the fund are like training and certifications. We have some clothing allowance, things like that fit into M&S. The next line up is department overhead. And so that is basically pays out of the fund to pay for other staff in the department who don't reside in either the building fund, the planning fund, or the engineering fund, or we have a series of other funds that are pretty small as well. But it mostly goes to administrative staff like me. Both Teresa and I are both in that yellow because we're not in one of those individual divisions. And then the top line is a similar concept, but it's citywide overhead. So that pays for all the folks and services that we get that we need to support our department. So City Hall, we pay rent for City Hall, my computer, our city attorney's office, payroll, finance, HR, that gets cost allocated across the entire department, or I'm sorry, entire city. So every department, essentially every fund has citywide overhead that gets allocated to it. So this shows that same bar as expenditures going back to 2019. And this one's kind of busy. I'm going to stand up and point. Project. So people can hear me. And I know people online can't see, so I'll talk as well. So starting at the bottom, I just want to explain this slide. We're starting back. This is fiscal year 2019, 20, 21, 22. Here we are in 2023. So we're 2.5 months from finishing this bar out. And this is the biennium. So our council right now is getting ready to go into adopting a new budget. These numbers have been solidified and presented to us, and that's why we now know what we're facing coming up for the next biennium as far as expenditures. And so that's what these two bars are. The next number up is 3% in 2020 and a 3% in 2023, or I'm sorry, 2022 is the increases that we took those years. The next line or number up are the number of staff that are in the fund or who were part of that fund at the time. If there's an asterisk there, that's what we finished the year out as. There's always when a budget's adopted, you have a number of FTE that are adopted into that budget, but then we always have people that are leaving, people retire, and it takes time to hire people. It usually takes about 6 months between when somebody leaves and can actually hire somebody. So there's usually people coming and going, which results in some savings in expenditures. So the ones with an asterisk is what we did the math and figured out exactly what the FTE was because we closed those years out. We're close enough to the end of this year that we're pretty confident that we're going to end the fund at 42 FTE. And then we're projecting out on our approved FTEs in the budget years. The next line up is our revenue. It's been pretty flat since 2019. You can see a little spike in 2022, and that came really from volume. That was a tough time on our staff. They worked pretty hard with volume that went higher than we anticipated. And as you can see, we came out with some daylight. And this is what you like to see is where our revenue exceeds our expenditure. So that happened in 2019 and again in 2022. But for 2020, 2021, 23, and what we're projecting in 24 and 25, we do nothing. That's what's going to happen. The next line up is our reserve. So that's that savings account contingency, which we've been eating into really since 2019, where we had 24 months of reserves. So that meant that we could essentially live without any revenues for 24 months if we just completely went dry. But what we've done is eat into that year in, didn't that year again and again, so that it has gone down and down. This fiscal year, we're going to end with 13 months of reserves and then go down to 6 months in the end of next year. So a year from now, 6 months. And at the end of the biennium, down to 1 month. And that's not good. Our fiscal policy that we have for the city is a 6-month reserve. So something needs to occur. We can't continue to do what we have been doing for the past few years. So what are we going to do? Well, we did a fee study, and what that said to do, if you just want to fix this problem immediately, it's a 60% fee increase starting July 1 of this year, so in a few months. And then a 10% in 25 and a 10. And what we did, so this is the biennium. We're right here right now. So starting in July 1 will be in this year, and then July 1st of 2024 will be in this year and June 30th, 2025. What we're showing also is what would happen if we added in the next biennium for planning purposes. This is not, we're not adopting anything out into here. We just wanted to show what would happen if you keep that out and we'll continue to grow our reserves up. So we understand that a 60% increase right off the bat, July 1 of this year, is not palatable to our customers. And so what we're proposing is to phase this in. And this is what happens if we do this by doing a 20% in 2024, another 20% the following year, a 20% in the out years. These are kind of just for planning purposes because we're going to be back right here with a whole new budget adoption and fee discussion, but we're just showing what it would take to really turn the curve up. So we're really pushing this out into the planning horizon, if you will. And it shows that it takes until 2027 with this fee increase before we get any daylight where we're actually covering our expenses. I'll pause here for questions because I'm going to move to the planning fund after this.
Okay. Matt does too. So Mandy and then Matt.
Okay. I'll let the
Okay.
chair decide.
So your planning goes out through 2025, right? And then you have to do another.
So our budget year goes through 2025. So we're pretty confident on what our expenditures are going to be that till that.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. You're right.
The personnel number is 42 to 44.
Yeah.
On a previous slide, you said it was adding one person,
Mhm.
and that's adding two.
No, so this, what we did is we're close enough to, we actually have 40. Well, this is the building fund, because
We have 44 adopted this current year. We
Yeah.
just have vacancies this year, so we already know that personnel number is gonna be lower than what
Got
it would
it,
be to cover
okay.
the 44. So going into next year, it's both increasing on existing staff as well as adding for filling those two vacancies.
Okay.
yeah, and also to be clear, that one staff would go into the department overhead area, our admin.
Yeah, the new staff member comes to our CDD administration fund, which is then cost allocated back out to building planning and engineering. But that fund also receives some different revenues, and so
Yeah.
the purpose of that position is not related to development, so it's going to be funded through a different source. That's not going to hit this projection. It's just part of the departmental overview.
And you said you did 5,200 permits in 2022. Was that
It's
previous 5,600?
And then it's
Do you have an
57.
average cost of permit? I mean, I know you have different between residential to commercial, but is there like a middle ground where you could say out of those 5,200, here's where the middle realm was as far as costs go?
Are you talking about the valuation of the permit?
Yeah, I mean, somebody comes in and gets a permit for a single family residence. It's going to be different than a permit for a multifamily,
For a
right?
commercial building.
A commercial building. Where's the middle?
I don't have a middle for you, but we do have some standard examples later in the presentation of what actual permits, like true permits that were in our system within the last year, what they looked like, what they cost, and then what they are going forward. I can probably pull something like that. Things
Right,
changed a lot, but
It's, I mean, that's really where the dollars and cents are, right? I mean, if you're doing a blatant 20% increase on permits across the board, how is it going to negatively impact housing? Because that's what we're sitting here.
We've
for.
got some examples, but that 56 or 5,700 permits, it's even looking at them together is apples and oranges, because I could have a planning permit to do, like convert a house into a
Right.
short-term rental, or it could be, a 6-story apartment building.
Understood.
Podium building.
So I just wanted to clarify, and then I want to, well, I'll go to Heather. And we'll try to save our questions for the end, but it's
Okay.
good to have a little breather. So I watched the advocacy subcommittee meeting with
Mhm.
BDAB, March 20th. And I wrote down that you were proposing a 30% for 24, 30% for 25. So this,
that's the
but this
planning
says 20.
I think
Okay.
that's the next slide,
Oh. I'll stop talking then.
I think. If
I
I'm
was
wrong, we can
confused,
go.
20 or 30%. That's a big difference. Counselor Campbell.
Super quick, Colin, shouldn't all of the numbers on the reserves be sixes in those last three bars?
It should be, but they're not. That's a good question. So what we would have to do in order to achieve this is we would have to change our fiscal policy in order to allow this.
I'm talking about how just literally that line looks like it is the same at where it says six and where it says five.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does. but-
I'm
We're talking,
sure
it's
that's
gotta be
just
round
trying
in
to-
the scale.
Exactly.
If that's $1 million or $2 million, right? there.
Right, it's, you're trying to put months on.
Okay.
it's months, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if your expenses go up, the number of operating months you can cover with the same dollar amount is
Yeah,
fewer.
that's true.
So it's three ways.
Like
Not
inflation.
flat, But the months go down because that expense bar has gone up.
Yeah, because this bar is higher, so it doesn't pay for as much or as many months.
Okay, Heather's going to hold her question till later. So
Okay.
you're
next
back.
slide.
Next slide.
So the planning division, as far as fund health, this one is probably the least healthy. I just, same bar, I think we can just click through this in the interest of time. So here's what happens to the planning fund. It's essentially the same story. It's just that they start eating, they run out of reserves earlier. But everything else is the same. This division is about half the size of the building division, a little bit smaller because it's got 20 FTE to recruit. Really, the story behind this fund is that back in 2018 and before that, they got some general fund support for front counter and doing some code amendments, some pre-apps, and to the tune of about $500,000, and that was taken out of the the budget, which then meant that fees would have to cover that, but the fees were never readjusted to account for that, just because the reserves were so healthy. But so that's why the planning fund it's eating into its reserves quicker than the others. But this is the story with the planning fund. Here we are in 2023, end of next year. So a year from now, we're essentially, we're going to be running out of money. We're going to have to cut costs in order to make that work. So this one is the one where we really need to take the most drastic action. So if we did that in the first year, that would be 60% first year, and then 10 followed by 5s in the out years. And that puts us into the black at the end of the biennium and kind of keeps us at or above the 6 months. Again, we're not going to ask for a 60% this coming, but we really need to do something with this one. And so the proposal is to phase this one in at 30 each year for the biennium.
So that is 60, just one more year.
Yeah. It just phases it in. We have heard from input from the development community that they prefer to have things phased in. If they know they're going to get hit, it just is better because they have contracts, they have projections that they already have, in the hopper, and then they hit them with a fee when they can't get out of it. So if they're able to plan ahead, it makes a little bit, it allows the market to adjust a little better. And you can see this is getting a little scary. We are skimming the treetops on going down to 4 months. And the thing to think about reserves too is that we have fluctuation. We don't make the same amount of money every month. We usually make quite a lot more comes in the summer than comes in the winter. So you really potentially even have a lot of work but dip below what you actually have during those leaner months. Next slide is private development engineering. Again, we can go through this. And this fund is actually the most healthy of the three. For the most, really the reason is because it's our youngest fund and it got the most attention early, like in this area right here, from both fee increases that went into effect. And then also we added staff, but we couldn't fill it. And so we actually had open positions for a while, which allowed us to build those reserves up. We actually really got fully staffed up this year. And for those of you who have run permits through, you probably saw how engineering kind of lagged behind the planning and building and getting permits out. We think we've got that turned around. We've got some numbers that show that is happening. And that's because we are at adequate staffing levels right now. So in order to bring that fund up, first year we would have to be a 30 followed by a 6 and then some 5s in the out years to get us keep us in the black and out of the red. But what we're proposing here is 10s across the board to keep us here and gets us out in the second year of the second biennium. We're back into the covering expenses, but we're still essentially eating reserves through that entire period. There's some other fee increases that are on the horizon. So right now, there is what's called a long-range planning surcharge that is added onto planning fees and engineering fees to help support, our long-range planning efforts. So that's our growth management department or division. Right now, they're set at 4% and they would go up to 10%. We also have some licensing fees. The licensing program has come into the department relatively recently, and so we've inherited a long list of different licenses that we administer, and the fees were never set at the full cost of recovery. And we're going to raise those. We're not going to full cost recovery initially, but we're going to take them in what we think are acceptable bites to move in that direction. And they're all over the place as far as depending upon the fee. So there's not like a percentage that we can talk about. This is an interesting slide. I'm just starting to put this into perspective, or using this to put it into perspective. That bottom line represents the building and engineering fee increases that we've taken since 2018. There was that 3% in 2020, and then another 3% in 2022. So that's a total of 6%. And then planning took a 5.5% in 2022, so a little bit higher one. So they're up at 8.5% increases over those 5 years. But if you compare that with the Western Region Consumer Price Index, that's up at almost 20%, 19.6%. So we have kept our fee increases below just the normal consumer price index. If we had just tracked this and been regardless of how much we have in reserves, and just taken fee increases commensurate with the CPI, we wouldn't be having the same conversation. It would be a different, probably having a conversation, just a different flavor. But we didn't. So we ate into those reserves, and now it's time to kind of take remedial action. So the next slide is another interesting one, and I'm just putting this out there, not really to make a point, but to just show perspective on what everybody's seeing with the cost of housing. So those bottom lines are what I just showed you on the last slide. And then you put the home price increases that have happened over that same period of time on top of it, and it just dwarfs what the other increases have been or should have been. Next slide. And these are some project examples. So this would be a single unit residential development, and I think the March median price in Bend was 660,000. So and this is an actual project, almost a 2,300 square foot home with, I think it's about a 400 square foot garage. The current fees for permits are 6,000, a little over 6,000. The proposal at the 20% increase, this also includes the planning and engineering fees for them to look at it as well, would take that up to a little below $7,500, so about a $1,300 difference. I also included the SDCs. We're taking a projection of 3% of SDCs on top of that. There is, at least for the city, a methodology study underway right now. It could lead to higher increases, but that won't be effective until later in the fiscal year. So I'm not going to, try to guess what that would be. So we just added in a 3% for that. And then the other fees would be the water meter and the affordable housing fee. It gets tacked onto a single family. And so what that would result in is it's currently at 36.3 for a house, and that would go up to about 38,600. So to put that into perspective, the new permits, just what CEDD gets, would then represent at the increase would be about 1.1% of the cost of that median cost. Whereas right now they're at 0.93%. So up from 0.93 to 0.1. That parenthetical number, that 1.4, I added that in earlier today because based on comments I got yesterday when I presented this to COBA, they said, well, you should grow that out at the full 60% so we see what it's like at the end when all of these are effective. And so I did that so it would be the 1.4 if you grew that. But that would presume that 660,000 is the median price in 4 years or whenever we achieve that. So it's a weird thing, but because you can't really tell what the home price would be at that time. It probably would be up. And then that bottom bullet is a similar sort of cost example to put things into perspective. So if you loaded everything in, all the permits for the city, all the SDCs, and the affordable housing fee and a water meter, right now, and that's including the park SDC as well, that would be about 5.9% of that $660,000 house. And then that parenthetical would be if we did the full 60% at once. So that's 6%. That's very similar to like a real estate commission. So just to put things into perspective on what that would be. I also would like to, before we leave this slide, point back up to that number, the permit fees, and just tell you what that includes. So that $7,500, which is what we're proposing, that's to pay for all the men and women here in the building division, planning as well, and sometimes engineering will get involved if there's issues with the sidewalk or a driveway approach, to review those plans to make sure that they're consistent with the building code, the plumbing code, or electrical codes, to issue correction letter. They look at every piece of that house. They issue.
That's what you do now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Issue a correction letter. Sometimes there's 2 or 3 or 4 iterations where corrections will come back. It gets re-reviewed. Another correction letter comes back till we get that permit ready to get issued. Then it gets issued. Then, when it's being constructed, each house, some houses are much more complicated, but each house, no matter what, has 21 basic inspections that need to take place. So we have to send an inspector out to do 21 inspections. All of our inspectors are cross-trained, so they could do multiple inspections if the builder's ready, like the building has to be in the condition to be inspected. So, but so just think about that. All of that work on building a new house for $7,500. That's probably one of the better deals you're going to get on all of the stuff that it takes to build a house. Next slide. So another similar example, but a different building type. So this would be multi-unit residential, so an apartment building. In this case, it is 8 units, and we based this one on valuation. So it was valued at $875,000. So the current permit fees are about $14,000. They would go up to 17. And so new permits are about 2% evaluation, up from 1.6. And then if you did that for a per unit increase, that's $408 per unit. And the next one is a commercial building, 19,000 square foot commercial building. Permit fees right now are $145,000. They go up to $173,000. So about a $28,000 difference for a large commercial building like this. I've got the SDCs plugged in as well as the other fees, but I know we are mostly just talking about our CEDD fees here today. So the commercial building, this one is valued at about $9 million in valuation. And for those of you who aren't familiar with valuation, it's almost like it's a multiplier. It's in the building code that we used in order to calculate building permit fees. It's almost like it's not related. It's not the price that this building would sell for on the real estate markets. It's kind of like your assessed value on your tax statement. You know, it's what it's used to set your tax rate, but it's not not the real market value. So anyway, that's what valuation is. But based on valuation, the new fees would be 1.9% evaluation, up from 1.6%.
You got 2 minutes left.
Okay, I think I got 2 slides left. So this is an ADU, just to show you what the difference would be. It would go, the permit fees would go up from about $3,800 to $4,700. So an increase of $865 just in the permit fees. And then I don't have any comparisons because there's not like a median sales price for ADUs. Go back to that also, and just so everybody's aware, on an ADU, we don't collect transportation or water or sewer SDCs for the city. Because, well, I'm sorry, we do collect transportation, not water and sewer, because they're still connected to the existing houses. But the park SDC and the transportation SDC do go into that. And next slide. Just real quick, we've done some building process initiatives, because when I'm talking about fees, people always want to know about what does this mean for review times. We're not adding new staff, but we're trying to make our existing staff and our existing systems more efficient. I won't read through these in the interest of time, but I will be giving a presentation next week, a week from today, to council on turnaround time. So tune into that if you want to see more. Next slide. But we are seeing improvements. So the top one is single family turnaround times. Our goal for that is 45 days. We weren't hitting that for a while. We're down to 26 for this past month. The next one is commercial complete review cycle for new construction. That's 90 days. We weren't hitting that very well. We hit it at 76 days in March. And then the last one is tier 3. Those are our big commercial or big industrial engineering permits. We like to have those out in 45 days. And we hit them in about 29 days in March. So some of that seasonal fluctuations, because we kind of get a big slug in the summer and fall that we have to work through, and then we get fewer in during the winter. So we've been working through that. So next steps, top bullet is today, including this. We're going to be doing a quarterly update, which I just talked about for council next week at their meeting. And I'm going to go over turnaround times, but I will be talking about fees as well. Budget deliberations with council and the budget committee are on May 22nd and then 23rd. Council adoption of the budget is scheduled for June the 21st, and they'll do a citywide fee resolution adoption that will include all of our fees in that as well. And that's adopted for 1 year. The budget itself is adopted for 2 years. So we will be back a year from now with a new fee schedule, well, in June of 2024, another fee schedule. And the fees that would be adopted on June the 21st will be effective July 1. And I think that's it.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up for questions. Like, I have this many questions. Yeah,
Might have to get
I'm not
them in
going to
writing.
ask them all. But some of the committee members might address some of them, but,
Okay.
yeah. Heather, Kathy.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you put the CPI graph up there. I'm just curious why we don't automatically increase fees to keep track with the CPI, so it's not such a shock when they do come up. And it sounded like the council decided instead to dip into your reserves and not ratchet up. And I just don't know in general what's the standard practice in this realm. If most cities do try to just keep up with the CPI.
Right.
And then as another question, we see the housing costs so much greater, and I'm sure that that factored in to try to get new personnel into your departments to keep up with the demand. I'm just curious if that's true. It would be my guess that in general, most businesses are having trouble attracting people because of the cost of living here in Bend, and the housing is a big part of that. So.
Yeah, so let me take that in two parts. It would be great if we just pegged our fee increases to the consumer price index. In fact, if we could dig our way out of this hole when we do, I'd like to just maybe do that moving forward. And then maybe have some kind of trigger, like once you hit 24 months of reserves, that somehow there's a temporary reduction until that kind of comes down, until you kind of need to, maybe you only take half the CPI until you kind of get back into equilibrium there. But that certainly would be a good business practice. So yes, I wish we had done that. As far as if I'm hearing your second question, it's did the costs go up because we're trying to pay our employees more to attract them to be able to recruit and maintain?
Well, I didn't
employees?
exactly say that, but I was thinking that you might have had trouble attracting enough staff. You showed some of your positions were open for.
Oh,
quite a
yeah.
while. And I was wondering if part of that was the cost of living
is.
that's here in Bend versus other locations.
It is. I have personal examples of trying to hire people. All of my managers have the same thing where we've got the right person for the job and they just can't make it work. We don't set, most of the workers who do the permit review are represented staff with the Employees Association and the union, and they negotiate a contract. It's all their pay is based on that contract. And then our management, again, they have to do sort of look around the state and make comparables. And so we're not able to just raise our salaries without a fairly significant process. But in those decision-making, in the decisions for the contracts and in our non-rep, the cost of living has been taken into account. And in fact, a year ago, when it'd be a year from when this fiscal year started, there were some fairly significant increases for the rep employees because the new contracts were adopted, and then some commensurate changes to the management staff as well, which is planned into those costs.
Thank you. That was it.
Matt.
So, housing costs is a big thing, right? Raising permit fees is not going to cut into a builder's profit margin because their profit margins aren't necessarily great right now anyway, because of fluctuating material costs and subcontractor costs, et cetera. So raising permit fees to potentially, in amongst other things, pay your employees more, make it more attractable to move here. It's creating the same problem because it's just going to raise costs of the home more. What's the other option? Instead of raising permit fees, if money were to appear, what's the other option? Where would it come from?
There's no
To recoup your reserves, right? Because that's the issue. It's reserves.
Yeah, well, it's revenue. I mean, if we had plenty of revenue, if we were covering our costs, we wouldn't be eating into reserves. So it's really just the fact that we're not covering our costs.
So if there was an income stream of 500,000 that used to exist, that doesn't exist anymore, it might help a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of a closed system. You got to get. We don't care where the revenue comes from. It just needs to come from somewhere.
Right.
So you mentioned at the meeting on March 20th that there was a council change. They had a, what's it called when you guys do a change? Counselor Campbell, a resolution. You said there was a resolution that changed the process of having money set aside for fees and everything.
For the planning fund.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, just want to clarify that. So your cost expenses, your permit they're going up both in planning and in permitting.
Planning,
Right.
engineering and building. So
Right.
those are the three
So
funds.
it's just not permit fees are going up. A lot of fees are going up. And I'm just going to touch on, and then I'll carry on. But that commercial building,
Mhm.
when you break it down and you sell it, that it's only 1.6% or 1.4%, that it's a soft sell. But that commercial building, that's $34 a foot that adds to the cost of that commercial building. And that was pointed out during the advocacy meeting a couple of weeks ago. So I just wanted, you're hearing these soft, small percentage numbers, but that one for that specific example of the commercial, that's $34 a foot. And you get 19,000 feet. That's more than to process that in your brain, that's a lot more to digest than a 1.2% increase.
The single family increases would cost a home purchaser at 45% DTI. They'd have to make 40 to 50 bucks more per month in order to account for that.
So I just wanted to share that.
Thanks.
And
Quick math on it.
Heather,
Just to follow up, or continue with Matt's question, I was thinking about this earlier. So how many other departments in the city are largely dependent upon raising their own revenue to support expenses?
Utilities, and we have some of the enterprise.
Big magic appears.
I don't have a complete breakdown of that right now. But yeah, utilities is a great example, but theirs are set through rates. And that's a much more stable form because everybody's got to pay their bills, and we certainly saw delinquencies during the Great Recession, but we generally have the same number of ratepayers. Whereas you get much more wild fluctuations with ours, yeah. But I don't have a full list of that right now.
So I guess, is there an opportunity for the city to look at a different funding mechanism or, payer mix, if you will, for your department that doesn't completely rely on fee increases? I think fee increases are going to have to be part of the
Yeah.
equation. no matter
Right.
what.
Well, I mean, one thing to be aware of, and I'm not sure how much you folks are aware of, is just the tax structure that we're under, the ballot measure 47 and 50 that
Yep.
froze our permanent assessed tax rate back in the 90s. Ben's got frozen at the lowest, I think it's $2.70 per thousand, which is the second lowest in the state, and it's the lowest for cities or larger cities. And so all of that general fund, which is the property tax that we collect, goes to pay for public safety, police and fire for the most part. And so, and they're seeing the same escalations in costs that we are, which are outstripping that general fund. And so with the budgeting process, and this has been going on for years, they're looking to remove general fund support from other non-public safety departments and divisions and moving them more into a user fee system. And that's why we're seeing that long-range planning surcharge going up from 4% to 10%. That was to reduce pressure on the general fund. That's why back in 2017, we saw, or 18, we saw the removal of that general fund support from the planning fund, is because it was to reduce pressure on the general fund because other funding sources that don't have fees needed that for public safety.
Okay, thank you.
Mandy.
What other measures are you taking around your budget to, like, where you can cut costs? Or, like, there's often like old contracts or something that are sitting around, or, just cleaning up that stuff. And then the way, this kind of piggybacks on that, the way you spoke about the permitting process and the inspections, the amount of back and forth, that sounds like a heavily manual process. Are there tools, software, anything that can come in and assist with that and maybe cut down on some of the human touch necessary?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, we are doing that. When I've actually been here, I was a planning manager before I was community economic development director, but I've been here over 15 years, and it was paper when I first started here. And now we are 100% electronic plan review. I mean, it's people sometimes come in and try to submit paper and they can't do it. We have to scan it and actually load it up electronically. So, so everything that we do, all that back and forth with the customer is all electronic. So our plans reviewers will finish their review and upload their comments and forward them to the applicant electronically, and then they pop up on the applicant's screen. So there are fewer touch points, but it's construction. It's kind of a messy process in some instances. And sometimes we do have to bring people in because it takes a face-to-face meeting to get something resolved. And we can't do inspections electronically. I mean, we have talked about getting a drone so we could do roof inspections without sending an inspector up a ladder.
Okay. Thank you. So I guess my concern is I'm thinking big here. So we got this community survey. It was finished in January, and the community stressed housing, affordable housing, houselessness. Those are the top concerns. I'm just going to throw in transportation. This is from Melanie's PSA that she put out summarizing it. Transportation's receded. So I'm circling and I'm including. So we've got City of Bend looking at these big permit fee increases. And I personally think they're a lot. We've got a proposed transportation utility fee that the city's also facing. The citizens, they're seeing all these potential big price increases, making everything more expensive. And I'm not sure if it's the right time to do all of this at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's the optics from my side of the fence. I don't work for government. I'm self-employed. I see people, the optics aren't positive with, hey, let's just get all these, let's increase the fees so we can keep doing all these things we want to do. So I'm trying to tie in how these big fee increases match the community survey, which directs council with their goals. Like, I want council to be really aware of how these fee increases impact everyone in the community. You're hiring one staff person. I've heard this one staff person is for the home energy score staff position. Is that accurate?
50%. And then the other is short-term rental enforcement.
Right. Okay, so that brought my temperature down a little bit to hear that. And
Short-term rental enforcement, you said.
And we're
That
kind
doesn't
of
exist.
It does, but on a case-by-case basis, this would be more proactive.
Okay, sorry, Cindy, go.
No, that's okay. So I'm just trying to summarize my 2 pages of concerns, and I think I have. That's my concern, and I had an idea if the committee would be open to it. You tell me if you're okay, but it would be great to have you back, Russ, and maybe Jeanette come back at our next meeting and maybe break these fees down a little more. It's alarming to see a fee go from 4% to 10%. That's like 2.5 times. I mean, I can do basic math. But maybe come back at our next meeting and break down what these really look like and what it means, so we can continue to have a good understanding of these fee increases. It's shocking to me. I'm just going to say that. So, yeah, if the committee would be open to that, or would you like additional information, just breaking them down a little more? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
The only comment I have is that, not getting into the individual departmental kind of cost, but and this is something, I'm just a question because I don't know the answer, but is the city choosing to put funds that, potentially could go to solve some of these issues, to decrease fees in some other priority? And is that widely known? Because that's, one budget and everybody makes choices, and somebody's fee driven, somebody's not. And then it's like, well, we want to do this, and we're putting a bunch there, which all goes downhill for what you guys have to do to make your stuff work, So that's that's the question I have. It's like, okay, if there's these pots of money, is there pressure on your guys' ability to get your job done because it's going somewhere else? That's my question for you. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's not a fair question, but that's what I think of when I.
Well,
when I
I'll
see
just
that.
tell you from my perspective, and we also heard like, why are we coming out with all these numbers right now? Why didn't we do this 6 months ago and get people? We just got our expenditures, those two bars for the next 2 fiscal years. We just got what that was going to be at the end of February, early March, and it kind of got finalized just a week or so before we presented our first time out. So we just got those numbers. And but that's what I have to deal with. There's just those expenditures that were that are part of my budget. If you have Jeanette Townsend, who is the finance director at your next meeting, she can tell you more about the overall citywide fiscal and financial policies that they're trying to achieve. But my costs are fixed, and I'm just trying to cover them. And I guess I know we're running late on time, and I guess I will say, well, first, I appreciate your attention, but I would go back to what I said on that one slide. This is a need, not a want. We're not trying to fund new programs that don't already exist. We are keeping our staff at the same level that we have right now, even though we expect, or we have seen and continue to expect that our volumes will go up, but we think we can cover those with our existing staff, just with internal efficiencies. So we don't have another alternative. We need to kind of continue to do this, and we are fee supported, and this is what we need in order to provide what I consider to be a critical service to the city. Because if we didn't have good turnaround times and inspections, it would be an economic development nightmare for the community.
Well, it's good to see the charts showing the turnaround times seem to be shortening, but the consensus from the public is that things are still taking too long, things are still delayed. What are how is the city staff accountable for shortening those times? Like what's in place? And when I watched that meeting, I think Russ said you guys just came up with some avenues to shorten that permit time. But where does it get held up in permitting? Is it because it's a huge, a huge project that's coming up, or is it single family homes? Where does it get stuck? Where is the slowdown? Is it because someone's on vacation? We don't know, but just getting some additional clarifying questions. Yes, Alex.
Just one follow-up, because I see this as what you proposed also helps to rebuild the reserves. And you said the goal, is it council goal? Or the goal is to have at least 6 months in reserves, or more than that?
Like a minimum,
So
is that right?
the minimum is 6 months.
Okay.
The recommended industry standard
2
is 18 or more
Oh,
months.
okay.
And
Or
that's
6 months is the minimum.
Yeah.
And and projections show you going.
right. And as you can see, we're not on any of those funds going up much above 6, except for engineering, which I think is up around.
Yeah, you got to be
12.
profitable, but you also have to rebuild your reserves.
But this
Okay.
goal is to rebuild it back up to an 18-month.
Yeah, but if you look at those numbers and you project it out,
It's
it's going to be like,
Yeah.
Right.
in 2030 before we're back up to there. With this scenario, I mean, we could, things change, and we will be monitoring these on probably a quarterly basis to see where we are, given the fact that we're getting so low in our reserves. But things change. I mean,
Yeah.
economies boom and go up and down, and
They change all the
we'll see,
time.
they change all the time. So this is the best information we have today, but we'll be monitoring it very
Thank you.
closely.
Yeah, one last,
All right,
and then I'll wrap it up. We
Yeah.
have a few things we're going to go over at 5 o'clock, if that's
So your
okay.
only way of cutting costs is cutting staff. And if you cut staff,
We could get rid of like third-party review and building.
yeah, but
So
that
it's a little-
expedites turnaround, doesn't it?
It's a relief valve. They can take as long as our staff do as well, but it gives us resources when we've
When you
got a
need
big
it.
slug of commercial.
And so
Sounds
if
good.
you were to reduce staff, you'd reduce your ability to turn around permits more quickly to get more housing built.
Correct.
So I just want to point out that this city is one of the least funded because of taxes, and it puts every cities in that situation in a really tough place. And I would hate to see staff cut and more time taking to get permits approved and get housing built. So it's a real difficult nut to crack.
Right.
And I am sympathetic to the issue, both on both sides, you know, the increases in fees and that. In our next discussion, we'll talk a little bit about reduction in fees, so. Anyway.
Did you have something, Ian? Yes, thanks for being so patient.
So my question really is related to timeliness, both for this meeting and overarchingly. The development timeline for projects that are looking at paying these fees is obviously substantially more than the 70-some days between now and those would take effect. And so while I'd love to have continue the conversation, because I have questions and I'm sure other folks here do. Are there any other ways we can address the timeliness issue of the shock this is going to be for every project in the development pipeline right now that hasn't yet submitted for permits?
Well, I mean, that is the phasing in approach we are doing. The trouble with putting it off for longer is it's just a deeper hole to dig our way out of. And even just like cutting it in half and then maybe doing something in 6 months, it's still the same thing. You're starting to eat into the, the hole just keeps getting deeper and deeper.
Okay. Has there, and I got, well, anyway, so sure, I would love to have a further conversation. I don't think we have time for it
Right.
this afternoon.
No, I understand.
And
Yeah.
thank you for your
Proposed
candor,
for
Colin, I appreciate
June,
it.
Sure,
the next fiscal
absolutely.
year.
Yeah,
Depending
those-
on, those numbers are proposed to take effect
July.
July
July 1.
1.
Yeah.
Yeah, 70-some days.
Yeah.
Literally.
Thank you. Thank you for the
permits in.
presentation and having it be so ready. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
And we'll
thank
we'll get back to you on next month's meeting,
Okay.
if that works, for additional information.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Thank you all for your attention and interest in this. Good questions.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we are going to go a little bit past 5. So, I mean, if you do have to leave, we're not voting on anything. I mean, if you have a commitment somewhere else, please feel free. But if you can stay, please stay. We've got the STD, oh my gosh, the SDC methodology update next. And Rachel, is that Kathy? Or do you have an intro or should?
If Kathy's willing to give, she was at the meeting, but she doesn't have to on the spot.
Did put
I
you
was
on the
just gonna
spot?
give the
Okay.
next meeting dates.
Oh, okay.
If
thank
people
you.
want to get engaged, and then Kathy can speak to anything that she thinks is really relevant to
Perfect.
relay to us. But the next SDC methodology work group meeting dates are May 11th and June 27th. And if you're interested in attending, I can get you more times as they are set moving forward, but just that those are the next 2 dates coming up.
And we're probably going to have 2 more dates after that.
Oh, okay.
Just so you know, that this last the first 2 presentations were very comprehensible. I was on it. I understood it. It was reasonable. This last one was just an overwhelming amount of information and very, very complicated. So it's difficult for me to really convey what the last meeting was
Okay.
totally about. But I would say the trend line, at least as it affects housing and the cost of housing and the cost of our more middle income type housing, as well as, yeah, I mean, obviously for deed restricted housing, we waive fees. So I'm really talking about that kind of middle income housing that is completely missing, as Matt had addressed. And I think that we're going in the right direction in terms of, in some cases, significantly decreasing fees on those smaller homes. But it's a balloon that if you squeeze it on one end, it gets bigger on the other.
Right.
So they can't they need the same amount of fees. It's how it's distributed. And they've hired an excellent consultant who also worked with the parks fees many years ago and getting those into tiers of justifying the changes that we are making, that they're very real world. Smaller homes use less water, they use less sewer. But we're starting with water and we're looking at sewer and transportation fees, and they're all over the map in terms of how to evaluate them. But I believe that we're going into a direction where we're going to be reducing the fees on some of these housing types we really want to encourage because it's in alignment with the council goals, not only in terms of cost, but also sustainability goals. And so there is a rationale to do what we're proposing to do, and it is going in the right direction. I can't really speak to a lot of detail, though.
Was it gonna be 30% the first year and 30% the second year?
It's actually on some of the smaller homes for the water, it's a reduction of 41%.
Nice.
I mean, we're talking significant reductions. But then it curves and it starts going up. So, you know, but I think it is going in the right direction and it's significant and it's we don't know how it is going to be phased at this point. It's the beginning discussions, but I do believe it is going in the right direction and it looks like our council.
All I wanted to add was, yeah, in that fire hose of information was one really interesting thing that I hadn't heard, which was the idea of like rings, where in the closest in, the SDCs would be lower, with the idea that the infrastructure already exists in the core of the city. Just wanted to say that. Interesting to me. Hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, we are going to be addressing location.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there's this balancing act between how we propose to charge these fees versus how staff can possibly enact the changes that we want to see happen. So we want to make it simple enough that it can be implemented easily, but also reach the goals that the council has set. And so it's this kind of juggling it. But it is going in the right direction as far as our community is concerned.
What I can speak to is that affordable housing will still be exempted. And the last SDC conversation we had at the last AHAC meeting, so will the transitional housing that you approved at the last SDC exemption meeting.
Oh, great.
And that did not go forward with SDC exemptions. It just took a little internal discussion to make sure. That's why we were going through the motions as a committee, but it's not what was necessary with regards to SDC exemptions for temporary outdoor shelters.
That was our insurance.
I will bring one more thing up. You know, Hiatus Homes was proposing the first micro unit project. And the Parks Department did not see fit to support their MUPD multi-unit tax exemption. It's like a 10-year exemption. Lynn's coming online,
No.
but
Got to start paying attention.
so, but they still can work with the schools and there are other ways of hopefully making it work. But one of the things that did come out about micro units, the impact on how we might adjust the SDCs might really jack up the cost for micro units. And it's because for water, because of right now it's allocated on the size, the meter size. And if it's adjusted to kind of fit in with everything else that we're working on, it would be a more expensive water charge for them. And so that's something that we do need to look at. And they had a significant hit. But I tell you, the graphs that they were showing us and all the bar graphs and all the information, it was just like overwhelming. But micro units were getting a hit. And I just want to bring that up, that we do need to look at that.
Lynn, we see you on the screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking Kathy might have some thoughts about that park board decision and thinking that perhaps those could be presented to Councilor Campbell at some later time, because my guess is there's a willing recipient for some of those comments sitting in front of you. I do know that council is very aware and engaged in that discussion. So that's probably where I'll stop. Thanks.
Perhaps I think that the applicant could have maybe done a little bit more work with their park staff ahead of time to kind of prep them on what the goals were and how this works. Because it seemed like there was a lot of misunderstanding it's secondhand to me, but it sounds like there was a lot of misunderstanding from the Parks Board of what they were asking for. where we're going with the MUFD programs.
That's been consistent, despite numerous staff engagements, I'd say throughout the process. So once again, I'll probably leave it at that, but thank you for your comments and appreciate, I think that there is some
Staff work with the
acknowledgement, I'd say, by staff on the micro unit STC conversation. So that'll continue to evolve is what I expect, to ensure that we are presenting the best framework to sort of balance the cost needs across the different users and different housing types to simplify the process, and then also to help incentivize the things that our state and council feel are the most important. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. It's a really interesting process for, I can't remember who said something about, nerds among us or something like that, but this is the good group to dig in. It's a lot of info. Really appreciate, Kathy, your time.
Great.
I'm done.
Okay. Okay, so I know we have quite a staff report today. So is that you, Lynn, or Rachel? I don't remember. It was 2 hours ago.
I'll let Lynn dive into the AHAC recruitment and application process that is currently open.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. So we are recruiting for AHAC members. We have 3 seats. One is Cindy's seat that will be nominated by the Central Oregon Association of Realtors. Anyone who is interested in that seat still has to fill out the application on the committee page, but that one's a little bit different. We also have a seat for an affordable housing developer that right now is Keith Wooden, as well as at large, which is Kathy Austin. So huge changeover for this group. I am very hopeful that we're getting really good word out to the public. We've had a lot of folks already asking questions, et cetera. So folks are welcome to get in touch with me or other staff if they have questions about that. And the application is live on our committee page through the end of this month. So that's what I'll talk about there. Rachel, do you want me to talk about the election since I'm on? Okay. So the other thing to think about is because your lovely and amazing chair, Cindy King, is terming off the committee, we have to think about elections for the next chair. And so my proposal to your group is that at the next meeting, the May meeting, you all would be able to nominate one another or yourselves to fill that role. And then we can think about it. Y'all can talk to one another, do what you need to do, and have the actual election in June, so that there will be a little bit of time in between. So this gives you all a time who are continuing to think about what your next stage in AHAC service might look like, and or try to peer pressure each other into taking that seat if you don't want that. That's your job, so that somehow we come out with a really phenomenal chair. I think we have great options amidst the folks who are staying on. And then we'll have 3 new folks start in July with their term. So just wanted to put that out there as 2 different sort of next steps with transition. Please help us get the word out. Looking for really great technical expertise on the committee, and would love some engagement, more engagement from the public in that.
And then on that note, Cindy will not be available next week for a committee council check-in. And so I was looking for a volunteer that might be willing to come to council at that, I think it's 3 p.m. start. Because we're not entirely sure how the council check-in will go, and often we don't know until the day before. We might need you for a good chunk of time that afternoon. So I would need someone with some flexibility. I wanted to offer it to our outgoing committee members, but I do know Keith has kids, so that might be kind of difficult. And Kathy does everything. So she's welcome if she's excited, because this might be her last opportunity to represent AHAC in front of council. Sorry, I don't want to make you teary. It's making me teary.
What day is it again?
That is the 19th.
It is, yeah, Wednesday
April
the 19th.
Oh, you know what? I have a conflict. I'm so sorry.
So if anyone else is interested, I just wanted to offer it to our outgoing
Well, thank you.
committee members first. Please hit me up, because we would love to have council representation or have committee representation at that council meeting. It's also going to be a big council meeting for housing.
I'm sad to miss it.
and a big work session for housing. We'll be presenting the comp plan to council, and we will be discussing kind of like all the big things. So it should be a great council meeting.
I know.
But we're gonna be there, so it's even better.
So.
Anyone interested?
I can't see my.
All right.
Look at my works.
Hit me up later.
You think 3:30? You're not sure?
Yep. Probably. Well, the website says 3.
It says 3 on the calendar.
So I just emailed the city recorder who said that they think that there may be a cancellation, so we may start at 3:30. Still in process of finalizing that, but you may get a half hour back there. So sometime between 3 and 3:30 start. I think the prediction is it'll be probably a 2-hour block of time. I'm just not sure if it's the front end or the back end of that time frame that Rachel gave you.
Probably.
We got Allison as a probably, which would be great.
I think that means yes.
It should. Probably will.
Should we take a quick vote? Just kidding.
And then Lynn, did you want to talk about tree preservation, or I can let everybody know?
Yeah, so y'all have heard a little probably over time about the tree code, and folks really want to dive in. Is the level of preservation that we are requiring in our code for new development or existing development right? What does that look like? And where do we go from here? And you all have seen, gazillions of articles kind of on both sides of the story, probably over the last decade, it feels like. Either way, we're diving in. So the first meeting to discuss that is Friday, April 14th from 10 to noon. They're in council chambers. There is some information that has been put out, I believe, in different, various media formats. If you don't see information, you want additional info, or you want the Zoom link, just give a shout if you can't find it, and one of us can send it to you. But there is a tree preservation code sort of kickoff, I think is what it is, coming right up.
I'll just say that I'm going to be wrapped into that, but I can't make it this Friday, but I'm going to be involved from, I save trees as much as I can in my own development. I think it's possible to do, but at the same time, I want to make sure it doesn't impact affordability. So I'm trying to be a balanced voice in the conversation, and I just want to let you know yet another thing I'm probably going to get involved in, but since I'm leaving this one in a couple months,
Right.
I can manage.
And I just want to thank our guest earlier, Skylar, for sticking around. So hopefully you all can connect with that meeting.
Is that all staff report?
That's it.
Anything else to add, Matt?
This coming Monday, 10 Barrel East, 5:30 PM, the second edition of the Affordable Housing Information Fair. We had one last month in Redmond City Hall. It was a huge success. We have another one this Monday, 5:30 PM. There's going to be a huge amount of entities there.
Is there a flyer?
Is that the one on 18?
There is, and I can email it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
We'll get it out.
yeah.
Anything else? All right, if no additional business, meeting adjourned. Thank you so much for your extra time.
Thanks, Cindy.
Bye, Lynn.
There's going to be pizza there. I don't know if it's going to be, that's at 10 Barrel.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Way to pull a good location, Kurt.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Or our percentage goes to something, be like, oh, you just need a little